that. We're live. Patrick, we're live.
Good Lord, we're live.
It's so true. Okay, I'm going to ad-lib the Intel earnings right off the top of the show. Here we go.
If you would like to donate to the Daily Tech News Show, simply go to dailytechnewsshow.com/donate. Donate via Patreon monthly or just once via Bitcoin or PayPal. If you want a t-shirt, go to slashloot.com. Thank you.
This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, October 13th, 2015. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, Mr. Patrick Beja, contributor and independent podcaster, and the Yoda of French podcasting.
Wow, I did not expect that survey result to come back and bite me in the Daily Tech News Show.
Yeah, Patrick's doing a survey for his Le Rendezvous Tech. It's for the Rendezvous Tech, is that right?
Yeah, it's for all of my French.
For all of it, okay. And he asked his people, Patrick is the blank of French podcasting, and one of them said Yoda, and I think he's right.
One of them
so
said
wise
Yoda.
And old.
Wise I am. But more people said you're the Tom Merritt of France.
Ooh, wow, harsh, man. I'm sorry about that. That's just not nice.
I was flattered, but maybe you weren't.
Hey, just hot off the line, Intel reported its third quarter financial performance, revenue of $14.5 billion, earnings per share of 64 cents. That beat expectations. They were only supposed to do $14.2 billion and 59 cents. Revenue from its PC group totaled $8.5 billion, which was up 13%. So even though PC sales are declining, Intel's selling a lot of chips. Each of Intel's other groups grew sequentially. So anyway, good news for Intel there. Shall we talk about some of the other headlines?
Let's do that.
Apple announced updates to its iMac line today. The 21.5-inch model now has an optional 4K screen, 4096 by 2304 resolution, though it now relies on Intel's integrated Iris Pro 6200 chipset. Doesn't have a separate, discrete chipset. 5K 5120 by 280 panels, AMD R9 M300 series graphics, and Skylake processors are now standard on the 27-inch iMacs. They're all 5K now, not just the top of the line. If you want to upgrade to the Fusion drive on any of these new models, 21.5 or 27-inch, it'll cost you $100. That's down from $200 or $250. Apple also has redesigned its mouse and keyboard, which come in the box with the iMacs. They also redesigned the trackpad, which you can optionally add. The built-in batteries in all three now charge through a lightning cable. Keyboard is 13% smaller, although the keys are the same size, so it just takes up less size on your desk. Trackpad has 29% more surface area and supports Force Touch. The mouse is lighter, and they say it's going to have smoother gliding. All the models are available today. 21.5-inch iMac starts at $1,099 for the 1080p version. The 4K model one will run you $1,499. 27-inch models start at $1,799. Keyboard, if you want to buy it separately, is $99. Mouse is $79, and the trackpad $129. Hat tip to Skyboard 13 for the subreddit post on this.
And along with the new iMacs, Apple updated iMovie for OS X to support 4K video editing. It also supports 1080p video at 60 frames per second. You can now also continue edits on a Mac that were started on an iOS version of iMovie.
Yeah, the iOS version got 4K when iOS 9 came out. So, bunch of good upgrades from Apple here. And interestingly, a lot of people are saying, well, why didn't they put this as part of their fall announcement? I don't think we need to have this as part of a really long announcement. This is perfect. Let me just tell you, Apple, not that you care what I think. This is the way to do lots of product announcements. Announce them.
Yeah, the announcement conference was really already packed and long, so I don't know that they wanted to add more. This would have made part of an announcement for sure maybe 3 years ago.
Sure.
Now things have evolved a little bit. They did have a PR push. There were a couple of articles about the redesigns of the things, and so they did communicate on them. It wasn't just an App Store update. The one item I'm curious about is the new trackpad. It's always been a staple of the design and engineering of their mobile, laptops, it's definitely something that put iPad, what am I saying, Macs, portable Macs, a step above in design for the trackpads. I'm not sure exactly how well it translates with the Force Touch, the new model with the Force Touch. For a desktop, though, I mean, they've had it before, the trackpad, but I think I still prefer the mouse. I'm sure some people like the trackpad, though.
Yeah, I think the trackpad is probably trying to combat some of the impulses that I've heard artists having, like Scott Johnson, to get a Surface Pro or maybe a Pixel C or something to use as a drawing device, and we'll see that Toshiba is making a play for that as well. So they want to try to say, yo, no, you Mac designers, we'll give you a really good Surface Pad for that. You don't need to go buy a separate tablet. I'm not sure
anyone can draw on that trackpad. I think if someone like Scott Johnson would, if they wanted something,
he's going to get a Wacom. You're right. It's kind of a silly argument on my part. But they do seem to be trying to say, like, these trackpads are good for drawing.
So good, yeah.
Yeah. Facebook announced it's testing a new dedicated video feed with channels for clips from friends, pages you like, trending videos, saved clips, and watched clips. The test replaces the Messenger button on the app with a video button on the iOS app, or in the favorites section on the left-hand side of the news feed on the web. The test is with a small number of people at the moment. They're also expanding suggested videos. This is a less dramatic change. It just says, hey, you like that video? Here's some more videos you want to watch. That's rolling out to most iPhone users globally, and they're expanding tests of that to web and Android users. There's also a test of a floating video that lets users do things on Facebook while still watching, and also a test of the ability to save a video to watch later if you can't watch it right then. But, Facebook doing a lot of things to try to make the video experience even better as the number of videos watched on Facebook continues to skyrocket.
Yeah, this is basically Facebook chasing YouTube, which is not surprising because basically ad revenue on banners is plummeting and has been plummeting for a couple of years. And the ad revenue money is now in video pre-roll and things like that. So again, Facebook being surprisingly on point on everything they do, or maybe not everything, but most things they do. And when I say on point, I mean for Facebook's interest. Not necessarily.
Yeah, and it's working. I mean, the video impressions on Facebook have been going way up. Now, granted, they didn't have as many to begin with, so it's easier to get rolling. But whatever they're doing so far seems to be working.
Yeah. Line announced a new security feature called letter sealing for its Messenger app. The feature provides end-to-end AES CBC 256 encryption to one-on-one chats and location sharing on mobile and desktop apps. The encryption key is stored on the user's device, not Line's server. Users will have to enable letter sealing in most cases, and all users must have it active for a chat session to be protected.
More good encryption, encrypt more things. I would like to see a few trusted security researchers looking into this and give a report back on how good of an implementation it is. But the initial announcement sounds promising. End-to-end, store the key on my device, not your server. I like it. It's good stuff.
What I think is really interesting about this is from a marketing standpoint, basically communication standpoint, the way they're choosing to name it. Letter sealing is very easy to understand for a regular person. When you start talking about encryption, people start thinking, maybe it's for people who have things to hide and maybe even terrorism or God knows what. But letter sealing, it speaks to people, I think. So I like the way that they're communicating on this.
And it was an interesting blog post from Line describing how this works, because it starts off with that very user-friendly, like, in the olden days we used to seal letters with wax, and it's like, okay, this is just going to be a puff piece. But then it gets into AES CBC 256 encryption, tries to explain Diffie-Hellman to people and why they are starting to use Diffie-Hellman. So it was a really interesting and sincere way of saying we want to explain what we're doing to people who have no experience in this. I don't know if it gets too detailed too fast in there, but it was an interesting post. Also, it lets me say, is this line secure when I talk to you?
Nice.
Bloomberg reports the U.S. Department of Justice announced it's satisfied with Apple's reforms to comply with antitrust laws regarding their ebook sales. Remember, they got in trouble for price fixing with the rest of the publishers. In a letter to Manhattan Federal Judge Denise Cote, the Department of Justice recommends monitoring of the company not be extended, even though, as they say in their letter, Apple never embraced a cooperative working relationship with the monitor. You may or may not have heard Apple challenge the appointment of monitor Michael Bronwich, but they lost that challenge back in May, and he's been on the job the whole time. But apparently, even if they were grumpy about it, they satisfied the Department of Justice.
What I take away from this is, as a dweller of socialist Europe, this is an example of an administration that says, nope, we're good, it's done, we can stop the administration work in that case. And I'm sure it happens here too. It's just we never hear about it. So yeah, it's good to see that sometimes they realize the government, to put it widely, doesn't need to be, once they're somewhere, it doesn't mean they're there forever.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Apple was in such a well-reported tiff with this Michael Bromwich is why it's being trumpeted in more headlines today. Yeah. He's out of your hair, Apple.
Starfuryzeta noted that Kickstarter has suspended a funding campaign for a device that promised to remove facial hair with a laser. The laser razor had $4 million in funding, but Kickstarter said the company behind it, Scarp Technologies, did not have a working prototype. Scarp has relaunched a funding campaign for the laser razor on Indiegogo.
This is crazy. I mean, and also Indiegogo apparently very welcoming. Indiegogo a lot faster and looser with things than Kickstarter historically. But I would say if they don't have a working prototype, sure, Indiegogo should let them fund, but you should also know that and invest your money. It's not an investment. Give them your money
knowingly.
Knowingly. Thank you. Exactly. I don't speak English that well. Thank you for helping me. But I do. I mean, I get why they got $4 million on this, because who doesn't want to shave their face with a laser, right?
You know what? We were talking about this before the show. Obviously, we discussed the important topics before the show in preparation. And my take was that I really wanted that laser razor to be able to be cranked up to a little bit higher power, and then have the laser get out of the handle and maybe be about 1 meter long and be made of solid light, and so I could make it into a lightsaber.
Then you get sued. Then you get sued out of existence by Lucasfilm and Disney.
That's why it's called the laser razor and not the light.
Right. Don't say it. Also, why Patrick and I have beards, because it's just way too complicated.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't shave with a laser, then it's just not.
Then don't shave. That's our take. coolantsv wanted us to mention the story about Deadspin's Twitter account being suspended temporarily for sharing animated GIFs and videos of NFL games without permission. The SB Nation Twitter account has also been suspended for GIFs of college football games. The NFL sent 18 takedown notices about Deadspin, and SB Nation received 8 takedown notices from XOS Digital, the owner of some college football broadcasting rights. There's not a lot of controversy about whether the NFL has the right to send these takedown notices. They have, copyright law is very protective of this, and the NFL is very protective of their copyrights. The question is, Twitter just signed a deal with the NFL recently. Is that why they're being quicker about cracking down on these things? Is that why the NFL is paying more attention? Because this is a practice that lots of people do. They put up animated, GIFs, however you want to say it, and videos all the time of music, of sports, and so are we going to start cracking down on movie clips that are in animated GIFs? Where does it end? Where does it end, Patrick?
I think the issue for sports events is that you can put down an animated GIF of 10 seconds and basically spoil an entire game if you put, especially in football. Soccer. You can really spoil things for people. So I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. This
isn't about spoiling, by the way, at all. This is about the NFL saying, no, we own the rights to that. And if you're not paying us for the rights, you don't get to put it up.
Right. It could be a mixture of both. Well, okay. So the other interpretation of this is Molly Wood on Twitter put it like that. I believe I'm not quoting verbatim, but she said something to something like, DMCA, the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have to agree with that. Fortune reports Adobe has announced a deal with Dropbox to use the cloud storage service with Adobe's Document Cloud document management service. This should make things like signing documents easier. Competitor DocuSign signed a sales partnership with Dell last week. Forrester Research estimates transaction requiring e-signature will triple from 210 million in 2014 to 754 million in 2017.
Yeah, so a couple things going on here. One is I would love anyone, I don't care if it's Adobe or DocuSign or somebody else, to make it simple and secure to sign documents online. It's a travesty right now. If it's neither simple nor secure to like take a PDF, print it out, sign it, scan it back in, and then email it to someone, which is what most people do. DocuSign does provide a better way of doing that. Arguably more secure. Adobe's Document Cloud document service with Digital Ink, probably with Dropbox, will now be able to do something a lot more similar to DocuSign, and hopefully more people use this. But yeah, this is a big business for people to get in on right now.
And even more incredible for me is the ability for Dropbox to insinuate itself in every aspect of everyone's cloud. We know they work really well with Office now. You have integration there. I mean, who would have thought a few years ago that Dropbox was super useful and grew incredibly fast, but they're really unavoidable now. It's very good for them.
Hey, on our subreddit, Giles King noted that today is Ada Lovelace Day. Ada King, née Byron Countess of Lovelace, was close friends with Charles Babbage, who designed mechanical general-purpose computers. One he designed was called the Analytical Engine in 1837, and Countess Lovelace expanded on Luigi Menabrea's Italian description of that engine, adding a way to calculate Bernoulli numbers. Lovelace added that way, making her the first computer programmer, even if the computer itself hadn't been built. And so they created Ada Lovelace Day. It's not her birthday. They wanted to pick a day that was kind of away from a bunch of other holidays so it wouldn't get overshadowed, but you can find out more at findingada.com, findingada.com. And there's lots of resources there to other great historical figures who have helped advance the cause of technology and computing.
Twitter filed a Form 8K with the U.S. SEC noting a reduction in force of 336 employees, about 8% of the company. It did not specify which departments would be impacted. Twitter also announced it expects Q3 revenue to be at or above the previously forecasted ranges of $545 to $560 million.
So it begins. We see the beginning of the Dorsey reign, and he signaled he was going to do this. This is not like a huge surprise or anything, is it? I mean, we kind of knew that he had to do something like this.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. I mean, obviously, I don't know how Twitter is run, but it's been, I want to say, on the metric that really matters the most, which is active users, it's been kind of stable for the past few years, and I can imagine that some of the things they've tried haven't really worked out as well as they would have hoped. And now that Dorsey is getting into the company again, he wants to change direction. I mean, that's why they're changing CEOs, and they want to do things a little bit differently here and there. So it's definitely not surprising, and hopefully the reduction in force is not going to be more drastic than that.
And it's what the shareholders want. They want to see cost cutting and revenue projections go up, and that's exactly what Dorsey just gave them. So keeping those stockholders happy. Finally, Toshiba announced 2 new hybrid laptops. The Satellite Radius 12 is a Windows 10 convertible with a 12.5-inch touchscreen, 4K touchscreen, mind you, powered by Skylake, up to 8 gigabytes of RAM, USB 3.1, and either 256 or 512 gigabyte solid-state drives, arriving at Best Buy, Microsoft, and Toshiba on October 18th, starting at $1,000 for the 1080p version, and it'll start at $1,400 if you want that 4K model. Toshiba also officially announced the new DynaPad, resurrecting a name from 1993. It's a 12-inch 1920 by 1280 Windows 10 2-in-1. Comes with a Wacom Active Electrostatics True Pen, capable of 2,048 levels of pressure, designed to work with the touchscreen to mimic the feel of paper, they say. The DynaPad is available today for pre-order in Japan, for shipping in December at less than 130,000 yen. It's expected to come to Europe and the US in early 2016.
I can't remember if this is I don't know if it's my impression now because I'm reading DynaPad, but I seem to remember seeing DynaPads when I was living in Japan in the early 2000s, late 90s. So this is a rush of incredible memories right there.
Electro Woman and DynaPad, didn't they used to? Is that not? No. Yeah, so this another of the endless parade of hybrids and convertibles, which is going to lead us into our discussion topic. But before we get to that, I want to thank everybody who submits things on our subreddit, dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. Invaluable in helping to put together the show each day. Get in there and vote, dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. That's a look at the headlines. So, Toshiba, HP, Dell, Asus, Microsoft itself, Google with the Pixel C. I mean, let's throw Apple in there. They've got the MacBook Air and the iPad Pro with a keyboard case now. Everybody's got a take on some kind of hybrid form factor. Whether it's the Surface Book, where you've got, a tablet. I mean, the Surface Book is essentially a 2-in-1. It's a tablet that comes off of the keyboard. But the keyboard has a beefier GPU inside, so that's what makes it more of a MacBook Pro competitor, except it's a touchscreen, et cetera, et cetera. Then you got a lot of competitors in that Surface Pro space, where they're beefed up tablets where you can attach some kind of keyboard to them and use them as a laptop, and they have kickstands, et cetera. And then there's the tablet with a keyboard, and that's what the iPad Pro is, and you can get keyboards for your Android devices as well. Then there's the Pixel C, which is essentially a laptop, but it's got Android running inside of it, and that's interesting all on its own. So Patrick and I were talking before the show, and we were wondering, is this the next netbook? If you were just looking at Surface Pro-like devices, you might think so. Like, it's a weird form factor. It's probably good for some people, but the fad will pass. Or is this the beginning of the new world of laptops, the way we used to have thin and lights and desktop replacements and a couple of form factors in between? We're now always going to be able to have touchscreens and removable keyboards in multiple different form factors. Patrick, what do you think?
I think so. This is basically I was going to say $1 million question, but it's a much higher number than that. It's an incredibly interesting space right now in personal computing. It's the one area where there is complete uncertainty. Basically, we don't know. The first thing, which I'm sure people will have contrary examples to, but the first thing is we don't even know if we need that kind of device. And that really has not been answered yet. People are trying them. Manufacturers are making different shapes and different types of devices, but we don't really know if we need them. It's just that if we do, they want to be the first ones to find out. It's also very uncertain because from the software point of view, we don't know what type of OS is appropriate for these kinds of uses, and we really have two philosophies going against one another in this. On one side, we have Microsoft with Windows, who's saying, let's take a traditional OS, basically Windows, a traditional desktop OS, and try to push the limit on it to see how much it can be usable in a smaller form factor. On the other side, we have Apple and Google using iOS and Android, which are traditionally mobile OSs, and trying to push the usability of those OSs to more work-like uses without compromising the simplicity of the OSs. So basically it's a whole bunch of questions which are not answering the one you asked. We don't know if they're going to be the next netbook or a hugely successful space.
Well, and Apple is always a good indicator of where we are. They tend to trail on form factors. They don't tend to blaze forward, except in design, right? So the iPhone was definitely not the first touchscreen smartphone, but it was the first one to really successfully get rid of the keyboard. So you can say, well, okay, there's a little bit of a form factor element there. But for the most part, Apple says we will start selling something and perfecting something once we think it's really useful and the use case is demonstrated. And what we see from them is mobile operating system for tablet and phone, and now a keyboard for your tablet because enough people want that. No touchscreen on your laptop. We'll do a thin and light laptop in the MacBook Air, but that's it. That's as far as we go. So it's up for grabs whether all of these other form factors, the Pixel Cs, the Surface Pros, or the Surface Books and the Yogas and all of those can end up becoming a form factor that finds a niche. Now, I was talking in the chat room with folks before the show, and BioCow was saying they're thinking about using them for sales because when someone comes in, you can use the tablet to do quick stuff with them. And then if you really need to sit down and start taking some information, you find a desk, you pop it into a keyboard, but you don't want to be carrying around a laptop. That's a very niche case, but I can see where that's useful there. And there may be more of those enterprise-like cases. My problem, Patrick, is we don't yet have, and I know Microsoft wants this to be true for them, we don't yet have that one operating system that we love on the tablet and love on the desktop and can be perfect for everything. Most of us prefer iOS or Android on the tablet. That's just a fact of life. That may change, Microsoft fans, someday, but that's the way it is right now, whereas most of us prefer Windows or maybe OS X on the desktop. So you can't really get one machine that does all of your worlds in one.
And that is, I think, where we're still at a very uncomfortable place for those types of devices, because really we don't have the answer of how to use them in a way that is optimal in those cases, because ultimately, you know, ironically, Windows 8 was trying to do that, was trying to be the one answer for all of the different cases. But with Windows 10, they sort of went back on the mobile version of Windows, you know, Windows RT with those huge tiles and the touch-friendly interface. And even on the surface, while it is somewhat usable, you end up having a very more precise interface where you need to hit the right button and the right menu and the right it's Windows. So the problem we end up having is that those devices are, well, I should say the danger that we face is that those hybrid devices end up being subpar in all cases, or at least in some of the cases. And the bet that some of the manufacturers are taking is actually you don't want one device that does everything. You might want one device that stretches things, like a very light laptop or a tablet that you can turn into a more work-friendly form. But really, these are different uses, and you just want the one device that is designed for that use when you are performing it. So yeah, having one device is really a danger of that device doing everything not good enough, not well enough that you'll be enjoying using it, and you'll end up going back to whatever device is specialized in that case.
For me, Windows 10 does a great job, does a much better job than Windows 8 of being a tablet and a desktop operating system at once. And Continuum still promises to be that amazing thing that makes it possible to plug in a phone and use it as a desktop, to immediately pull off a tablet from something like a Surface Book and feel like you're still using the same machine. The problem is we all live in iOS and or Android worlds on our tablets, right? And Waffle Focus is giving me a hard time for not mentioning Linux on the desktop. So if we have our Ubuntu desktop and our Android tablet, why would we move to a hybrid that we have to give up one or the other of those, even if Android's Linux, right? It's not the same distro. It's not the same ecosystem. You got to have Google Play services if you want to use that world that we've come to know. The question, it looks like Windows is in the only position to unify these, right? So if I can get all the apps I need for my tablet experience on Windows, then I'm going to be happy. And that's going to be true of a lot of you. A lot of you are probably already saying that. Hey, wait a minute. All the apps I need are available on Windows 10. And if that's the case, great. Microsoft's very happy to sell you one of these, and Toshiba and HP and all the others. But I wonder how many it is, but I think for a lot of people, it's not true that they're saying, hey, hold on, I want to continue to use the iOS apps that I know and love when I'm in tablet mode, because that's the ecosystem I bought into there. But I'm Ubuntu when I'm on my desktop. And so one device, again, doesn't work for me that way.
I think we're getting into theory elegance territory here, which is, in math or in physics, when you're going in the theoretical level, there's always this elegance of the formula, or the math is so beautiful that you want it to be right. But sometimes the elegant solution is not the real one, the right one. And I think in this case, the idea that we would only use one device is very appealing. It's very seductive, and we would like it to just work, because it would make more sense than us having different devices and different OSs for different uses. I do worry, though, that be it on the side of mobile devices or on desktop devices, the reality is going to be that when you start, there are always cases where it works, but in a lot of cases, you're going to end up wanting to use your Android device for desktop-like uses, and in reality, it's just not going to work for whatever reason. You just want to you don't want to hold your arm up. You want to have more apps working together. You want to have, files in Windows, and Windows that you can move around, just things like that. Or on the other side, for Windows OS, when you're using it on tablet mode or whatever, it's not going to work because it's just too fiddly to go and find the files and double tap and move the file around and things like that. So the real danger here is to want that more than it is actually practical.
I do think sometimes you want multiple screens, right? I'm sitting here looking at an iPad that has a soundboard and a laptop that has chat and something, and I have a separate screen over here that has my rundown for the show, and so I want multiple screens. If there were one processor running all those, though, and there was like really good wireless connection between them, so I didn't have wires running all over the place, I wouldn't mind that. But I think your point about theory elegance is really interesting, because that's exactly what I'm describing right there. Is like, but it would be so elegant if I actually did it that way.
Right.
The one point that I'd like to finish on, Tinvec was saying, you know what, I do everything in the browser. It doesn't matter what machine I'm on. And I think that we've been slowly creeping that way for a long time, and the app ecosystems diverted us from that road. But since the 90s, companies have been saying, well, hold on, we really could do everything in the browser. And I think that's when we get to the point where we can really test whether this is just theory elegance or not, is when we start to have one system, one cloud system, where it doesn't matter. You're liberated from your ecosystem, and your OS is irrelevant, and you can just do everything without it mattering what machine you're on.
So yeah, again, I think this is really I'm not going to repeat the theory of elegance, but I
think that's realistic with ubiquitous internet and cloud services.
So the problem is there are going to be 90% of cases where it's going to work. And for a phone or for a tablet, when you have your computer to fall back on to when things get really, you really need to, it's okay. But if you're talking about making that device your main device, or the device you take on a road trip or on a work trip, then those last 10% of cases where, for example, Tom, you have to edit a show. And we're not quite there yet where you can edit an audio show in the web. I guess we could, but it's just not practical. We're not doing it.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but if you want to talk,
I think it's more about implementation than technical possibility.
Yes, to an extent, but I think if that already worked, you would already be doing it, because why not do it
App
already
ecosystems.
now? Well, okay, well, you know what? Maybe you should try to go that route and see how it works out.
Well,
I guess the point
no,
I'm
because
trying
the
to make.
services aren't there yet, but I think they could be.
Okay, so they're not there yet. And at that point, when you get into those, it's exactly this conversation that hinders the development of those solutions. You get into those 5 or 10% solution cases where you have to get to the conversation of, well, yes, but they're not there yet, but maybe they're going to be.
But the more Chrome OS devices that sell, the more motivation there is to create them.
I guess my point is, in those cases, if it's just your phone, it doesn't matter. If it's your work, or if it's something that you actually need to achieve what you want to achieve, it does matter. And those 5%, 10% of cases, while they don't seem like they're super important in theory, then they become the roadblock factor that is going to stop
All
everything.
I'll say is those used to be 20% of cases, and now they're 5 or 10. I think it's getting smaller. That's all.
I think your science is sound, Tom.
All right, let's get to our pick of the day. 15 years ago today, Tristan Lewis suggested that audio and video tags be added to the RSS spec, and that he didn't invent it, but that led to enclosures and then eventually podcasting. So let's celebrate with a podcast pick from David in Perfect Weather, Columbus, Ohio, who said, if you were a fan of the Serial podcast, which episodically followed an investigation of a decades-old murder, you're going to love a new podcast called Limetown. This recommendation will be short and sweet, as I don't want to give away any spoilers, but Limetown follows a 10-year-old investigation, and so far, each episode has been around 20 minutes. It's definitely a thriller. I've heard lots of people saying good things about Limetown. So, maybe Limetown will save podcasting, like Serial did. Go subscribe.
I sense the tiniest bit of irony in your notes.
Just a tiny bit. Just a tiny bit. No, it's a good recommendation. I've heard it's great. So thank you for sending along the pick, Mr. David in Perfect Weather, Columbus, Ohio. And you can send your picks to me at feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can find my picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/pick. Finally, our email of the day, Tim wrote, a few weeks back, you were discussing the possible applications for VR technology in airlines. I've had a chance to try this. Air New Zealand ran a VR experience as part of a museum exhibit in Wellington, New Zealand, where I live, a few months back. The experience involved a mocked-up futuristic flight deck with airline-style seats. Each seat had a tower PC and an Oculus DK2 next to it. Once you put the DK2 on, you saw a 3D representation of the flight deck, after which they started taking bits of plane's fuselage off and transported you to tropical islands and jungles, etc. There's a video of the whole experience that you can see on Vimeo. We'll have a link to that in our show notes. Putting aside the off-discussed resolution challenges of the DK2 and a few 3D models that could have done with a few more polygons, the experience was highly immersive, and I genuinely forgot I was in a cramped airplane cabin for the duration of the demo. For me, the most compelling use case for VR in airplanes is to provide a much larger screen than the tiny back of seat screens we're all used to. For example, every passenger could have their own IMAX cinema with Dolby 8.1 to themselves. Of course, that relies on much increased VR headset resolution, but with 4K headsets soon to be upon us and 8K screens in the pipeline, that's just a matter of time, I think. Interesting to think how that same concept might affect the movie theater industry.
It is definitely interesting, and I remember gasping when you were suggesting this in the episode last week. The big question is going to be, though, when will the airlines have large enough space between the seats that you don't bump your VR headset into one another when you're moving your head in your IMAX theater?
Yeah,
virtual.
it's only going to be available in business class where you don't need it. Yeah, this is a really cool demo, though. I encourage people to go take a look at it on Vimeo. It is essentially some really pretty screensavers and such. But as far as like giving you the idea of what an airline is thinking, I felt like it was pretty compelling. I hope they do something similar to that.
Super interesting for sure.
Yeah. Just don't network it so I can actually see the other people in the cabin. Because that was the one thing they did at the beginning, and I think it was to change your sense of context. They started off by showing you a virtual airplane cabin, and like he says, then they pull off parts of the fuselage, but you're still sitting around a bunch of other people, even in the virtual world. I'm like, let's get onto the tropical island faster. I don't need to be in a...
Oh, and actually the seats are, they're not right next to one another.
Not in the simulation, they're not.
Right.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
You can simulate like you have more room And then keep elbowing the lady in 5B right next to you. Well, that's it for this Daily Tech News Show. Thank you, Patrick Beja. As always, my friend. It was awesome.
Thank you for having me again. Every week. I mean, every week I wonder, am I going to be back? But I am, so thank you.
That's why I send you those reminder emails.
Right.
Because it is every week. It's not going to change. Like, we'll tell you if it changes. How about that?
All right. So from now on, I'll
assume you're
coming back. And if I don't, you'll let me know.
Frenchspin.com to find Patrick's other podcasts. Follow him on Twitter, twitter.com/notpatrick. Can people still take your survey? Is that still open?
Well, it's really for the French listeners. So
I see.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah, it's on FrenchSpin.com.
Well, it's in the surveys. It's in French.
It is in French. It is
okay. So if you can't read it, don't take it.
Yeah, basically. If you can, though, I'd love to. You can also come to Twitter and let me know just all of the things that you want to tell me. I'm not Patrick, and go listen to Pixels on FrenchSpin.com, where the latest episode has Tom. It features some Tomness in it. That's amazing.
And Tim Stevens from yesterday, who was on DTNS, also on that episode. You know, JP Wiegand wrote in with a pick of the day after listening to you and Eric and I talk on Friday for the Phileas Club. I'm not going to use it as a pick of the day, JP, but I'm going to use it right here. JP says, I know what you're thinking. Oh, brother, yet another podcast to keep up with. Not to worry, the Phillies Club posts only monthly, but after listening, you'll wish it was more often. It's a show that brings together interesting individuals from various parts of the globe. There they discuss news events and how they're viewed in those different locations. The discussions are engaging and thought-provoking. JP from Seven Hills, close enough to Parma to enjoy pierogies without having to wear white socks with his sandals, Ohio.
Well, thank you so much, JP. All of that followed. It's really kind of you to be so glowing in your review. I really appreciate it. So thank you.
And I am glowing about you if you're one of the folks that makes the show possible. We work on the value for value model. Totally borrowed it from Adam Curry and No Agenda. If you get value out of the show, then consider giving us some value back. If you're willing to give us $1 a show, stole that from Dan Carlin, you can do it at dailytechnewsshow.com/support. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can give us a call, 512-59-DAILY. That's 512-593-2459. Listen to the show live Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern at player.alphageekradio.com. Visit our website, dailytechnewsshow.com. Back tomorrow with Scott Johnson. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Excellent.
That was a good show. What should we call it?
So I'm very disappointed that Showbot doesn't have the theory of elegance as the number one.
I mean, we could just call it that.
Yeah, well.
Oh, look what just got submitted. The theory of elegance.
I was going to.
And it's got a vote already. If you can't shave with a laser, don't shave. That's pretty good.
I like it too.
And for Silver Blade.
Ooh.
What?
It's pronounced dumb CA.
Ooh, look, 400 responses to the survey.
Nice.
Actually, I'm going to have to run.
No worries, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was a super fun show. And thanks, chat room, for being so kind as always. And thanks, Roger, for being awesome as always. And thanks, Ellie, for being Ellie as always.
We'll see you later, man.
Bye.
Bye.
Theory of elegance. I like the laser one because I like the word laser.
Well, it's a good word. Why wouldn't you like it?
And it's funny because it's an acronym, but over time it's just become a word.
Right. Masers were more popular at the beginning than lasers.
Yeah, but the problem is they couldn't actually get enough power out of them to do anything very useful. Although they did make a microwave.
Was it a maser? I thought it was radar.
What?
They used masers in the first microwaves? Because it was a radar that caused the chocolate bar to melt, which gave the guy the idea.
No, but the study of developing the microwave that you have at your home, not the idea of microwaves. But,
No, I'm talking about the microwave oven.
Yeah, the way I understood it, was that it was a concurrent thing. That there's like, oh, we could use microwaves to. I think that came out before the advent of the.
Well, in the 50s, there was a guy working at what was it? It was one of the big aerospace contractors, not Northrop.
Rockwell?
I think it was Raytheon. It might have been Raytheon. I think it was Raytheon. And he was working at Raytheon, and he noticed a chocolate bar melted in his pocket when they were working on something because of microwaves, and it gave him the idea for a microwave oven.
History of Mazers.
But that's microwaves, not masers. They may have then used masers because they were more whatever practical in the radar range.
History, blah blah blah. Came out 52, 54. Principles. The first maser principle was proposed by Albert Einstein in 1917. I guess at the time he was tired of waiting for his supper to be reheated on the stove. There must be a way to make this process faster.
But that's masers, not microwave ovens. Those are not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah. Well, no, but the concept of using microwaves to heat things. The whole idea was, ow! If you want siblings, you got to be careful with your legs. In any case, they went with lasers because it turned out to be a much more practical product.
Right.
Hope the roof is done. Inhaled enough tar fumes.
Did it get quiet?
I hear now when they do the hot roofs, they used to have a little thing they would boil the tar in, and then
yeah.
But now they just lay out these sheets and then they take a blowtorch to it, or it looks like a blowtorch, but it's someone in the chat room might know, but it's a lot bigger, and it's used there to heat the compound or whatever they use, the tar compound.
Mein Gott. You know what? The only thing I don't like about modern television is it's not in sync. So I see things that are going to happen on my phone as a notification before they actually happen on television. Such as Javier Baez's 3-run homer just now.
I'm sorry. I'm curious to know if the Blue Jays will make it, because it'll be the first time in how long since a non-American team has played in the World Series.
93, I think, in the World Series, yeah.
I've always wondered why they didn't try to include Japan into. I mean, maybe change up the leagues a little bit so they would accommodate them or something.
Travel. First of all, they don't want the old days of where the National League and the AL didn't play each other are over. Back then, they might have done something to include Japan, but even then, Japan wasn't at the level yet, and so now it's just travel.
Because if they can do the TPP, they can wrap it into the Trans-Pacific Baseball.
Well, what they did instead was they started their own World Cup. They tried to call it the World Cup, and then the International Amateur Baseball Association told them they couldn't because there already was a World Cup. So they called it the World Baseball Classic.
Wait, but who runs that? Japan?
MLB.
Oh.
But they get players from the Japan League to be on the Japan team, and any Japanese players playing in Major League Baseball can also play on the Japan team. What?
I'm trying to nibble off her forearms to let go.
Doesn't sound like that.
Oh, does it?
Sounded a lot weirder than that. Sounded almost Lovecraftian.
Oh, like I was trying to...
like maybe one of the old ones had possessed you.
You know, they should really... Of all the things they haven't done movies based on, I don't think anyone's really done a good Lovecraftian movie in a while. Or, I mean, there's plenty of novels and
They did an audio play of Lock and Key that supposedly Brian Brushwood says is great. That's something I might check out.
And of course, when you combine, I still want my Godzilla versus Cthulhu movie.
Well, there should be a monster tournament of movies. Kind of like how Marvel has that whole plan of movies. They could just have, like a tournament of movies. You could have like Kaiju versus Cthulhu, and then like Godzilla versus an alien invasion, maybe. I don't know.
Currently reading Godzilla in Hell, but I'm not too impressed just yet.
Really?
The comic book. It's a series.
I'm reading all the Star Wars comic books right now.
So this is the thing about reading all. It's the stuff that got transferred over from Dark Horse, right, to Marvel. And
I don't know if it got transferred or just like restarted, because these are canon, but none of the Dark Horse stuff is canon now.
Oh, it isn't?
Nope.
Ah, lame. That was one of the best parts.
Correct me if I'm wrong, people.
Well, I know that Dark Horse lost the license, and all the old reprints are getting reprinted by Marvel under.
Yeah, no, there's new. I'm not reading the reprints. I'm reading the new stuff.
Well, bugger all. I guess they'll get rid of the what was the alien race that the Tuvong or whatever that came. Remember? It was in the novels. It was like a extra galactic race comes. They're totally immune to the Force.
Oh no, I don't remember the name.
All their technologies is biology based. They grow.
I don't know that I've ever known the name. I didn't read any of the Dark Horse stuff. I'm sorry, Ellie.
I gave you a headset. Why don't you play with that one? Why must you play with the one that Daddy used?
TV Zegon says his friend Jason is doing a Lovecraft comic book series called Providence with some hack named Alan Moore.
Alan Moore. I wonder if he's still bitter.
Always bitter, never smooth.
That's probably why he makes you a better writer in a way, I think.
Definitely leads to a certain kind of story.
Well, I've often believed that the best art comes from conflict.
Then what about Paul McCartney?
I said great art. Ever since he did that Christmas song, it's simply that song. It's really, they used to play it all the time during Christmas.
I mean, it's a fair point to say that Paul hasn't had nearly as many big hits since John died.
No, he might have hits, but I don't consider his music art in a way. Actually, in many ways. Some would say that the wrong Beatles left.
Oh, don't kill Paul. He's already dead. It's not the real Paul anyway.
I could say some really mean things, so I won't.
2 down, 2 to go, 2 down, 2 to go. They have to change. The Meat Puppets have to change that song.
Oh, there's another band I couldn't stand. Meat Puppets, Mudhoney. College was filled with a lot of bad bands. My college, anyway.
I think you mean the world? Maybe? 1 down, 1. My life is a constant state of trying not to forget things. Preparing myself already for old age.
I would.
Right now, they're work things, but eventually there'll be things like going to the bathroom.
You know, from what I understand, as long as you keep working until you die, your system tends to kind of keep
compensate.
Up. There's something that happens when you retire and you suddenly just don't have things to worry about, like to constantly, process in your mind.
Yeah.
Like when you run a business, you got to worry about taxes. You got employees' payroll. It's a bunch of things. It kind of keeps the gray matter moving.
All right, friends. Well, we're going to stop this broadcast, but thanks for watching. If you've been wondering where Jenny is, she's off this week on a much well-deserved break, but she should be back next Monday. We'll see you tomorrow, and she'll see you then.